Welcome to the second session of the Automation Suite series. I'm Suhani. I'm based out of Bangalore, UiPath office, and I manage the community for UiPath developers. And today we have Pavan and Ramkrishna as our experts from the automation world. Feel free to scan their LinkedIn's, and they might be posting some valuable content around your interests, so that might help you. Moving ahead, they will talk about the session and set the context. But before that, I'd like to share some of the know abouts. For anybody who missed the last session or thinks that they cannot attend the sessions ahead, uh, we wrap up our sessions within 48 hours of it getting completed and upload it right from the link from where you all registered. I'll paste the link here in the chat as well. But feel free to check out the recordings and decks even if you could not pay attention end to end during the sessions. It would be available at any point from any part of the world, so you have a handy resource. Also, feel free to ask as many questions as possible in the chat. We have experts who will answer it in real time. And we also have a 15-minute dedicated section towards the end for question and answer where you can unmute and clear your doubts. So feel free to do that. And any ideas, any feedback regarding the sessions, or you're looking for any other topics for us to cover, feel free to let us know. Please do consider reaching out to us and we'll see how we can accommodate that. That's most from my side. Let's keep it an interactive session. I'll hand over to the speaker for today. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you, Shahani. So, hi
Thank you.
everyone. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. This is Ramkrishna Kadia, and I work at UiPath as a technical account manager, and I have overall 15 years of experience, and I'm with UiPath with close to 3 years. Uh, I would request Pawan to introduce himself. Pawan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. A very warm welcome to all of you. So, I'm Pawan Rathor. I have been working in IT industry for more than 15 years now, and out of which more than 9 years I have been with UiPath. In my journey, I have worked across multiple products and seen how the automation products within UiPath have grown over the period of the time. I support customers in their journey of automation to adopt them, scale them, and enhance the value from it, right? So that's a brief intro about me. And Ram, you can continue, maybe.
Thanks, Pawan, for the introduction. All right, so let's get started. So today's agenda is we will learn about the automation suite deployment modes, and then we will have a look at the prerequisites of version 24.10.x, and which will include the hardware and software prerequisites, followed by the deployment types and capacity planning, and how to set up the DNS. Then we will have a look at the prerequisite checks, how can it be done, then how we can configure the disk on the uh, Linux virtual machines that we will see. Post then we will have a look into DB connectivity and walkthrough of the cluster config JSON file. All right, so it's the main configuration file that we will have a look into it. Then we will see the installation of temp Docker registry, followed by the Kubernetes Infra layer installation of server and agent, and then we'll initiate service and fabric layer installation, right? All right, so let us talk about the automation suite deployment modes. So there are two different type. So first is single node. So single node is something which is default mode, and strictly it is supported for the evaluation and the demo scenarios. It is not suitable for production usage. So if you want to play around with the product, how you can install it, how you can uh, configure it, then you can use a single node, right? But if we talk about the multi-node, right, then it is specifically recommended for the production usage, and it comes with the two different variations. One is the light mode and another is HA mode. So in Light mode, then infra and share components are in high availability, where services are set to non-HA. But if you wish, you can set specific services to HA mode. Whereas in HA, which is a high availability mode, all the infra, share components, and services are available into the high availability, right? Now, we will have a look into the prerequisites of 24.10.x version, and as you can see in this particular table, we can see the hardware and software prerequisites. So you can see the in first column we have components, second column the requirements for the single node, and the third column we have the requirements for the multi-node with 3 VMs. So processor per cluster in single node we require 32. In multi-node we will require 96. Minimum processor per node in single node it is not applicable, whereas in multi-node it is 8 CPU. In As a RAM we will require 64 GB in single node, whereas 192 GB in multi-node. And minimum RAM per node in single node it is not applicable. For multi-node it is 16 GB. So the high-end requirement like 32 GB, 32 processor, 96 processor, right? 64 GB RAM, 192 GB RAM, right? Are specifically for the all the products if you want to set up in your environment, right? And now, if we have a look at the cluster disk, the various disk we have for various purposes, right? So cluster disk where the cluster will be resides, right? So 256 GB SSD will require with a minimum IOPS as 1100 for both single and multi-node. Data disk, which will be specifically on server node, not the other nodes. So 512 GB SSD hard disk will required, and its minimum IOP is again 1100, both for single and multi-node. So ETCD disk 16 GB for single and multi-node both, and again it will be on the server node only. So UiPath bundle disk. So UiPath bundle disk is something which is only used for offline installation and should be created on the first node. And this is where you are going to store all the libraries and binaries, right? Uh, through which your the Docker images will be used during the installation, right? So this should be again installed on the or the setup on the first node with 512 GB SSD for single and multi-node. Object store disk, so this is only on the server node and only when the you are not using the external object store, right? You can use the any S3 compatible object store in cloud if you have access to. So again, its requirement is 512 GB for both single and multi-node. Ceph data backup disk, and again it is required only in single node RK2 setup with cluster storage. So again 512 GB SSD for both the single and multi node. If you are installing AI center, then you will require the AI center disk with 51 GB as minimum for single and multi node. But if you have one training pipeline, then 105 GB is recommended for both single and multi node. Operating system. So it is mandatory to have Red Hat Enterprise Linux onto the VM installed, right? So from 8.8 to 9.6, you can use the different version, whichever is allowed by your organization. And in addition to that, you need to have supporting packages for the automation suite installation. The packages like OpenSSL, Unzip, Podman, to name few. Now, if we talk about the task mining agent node, right? So it requires 20 CPUs, 60 GB RAM, and 256 GB cluster and state disk, and it does not require any data disk. If we Next we have automation suite robot agent node. So automation suite robot uh, agent node is actually responsible for running the background processes and also the cross-platform processes, right? So if we talk about the different parameters, right? So based on the robot size, we have different CPU, memory, and storage. For small robot size, zero point 0.5 CPU, 1 GB memory and storage is required. For standard robot size, 1 CPU, and 2 GB memory and storage is required. And medium robot size, we will require 2 CPU and 4 GB memory and storage. And in large robot size, we will require 6 CPU and 10 GB memory and storage. Uh, if you're planning to, have AI Center and Duo installed, right? So you will require additional agent node to support it. So for that, for based on the various usage in your organization, you can set up the agent node based on the mentioned configuration, right? So if it is the minimum for service of ML skill, you will require 0.6 CPU with 2 GB RAM, and you will require 20 GB disk on the rancher partition. Minimum for training pipeline, you will require 1 CPU, 4 GB RAM, no GPU, and 20 GB on rancher partition, and minimum 51 GB AI center disk for partition, right? And recommended is 105. uh, if you have introduced DU, then for DU model serving, for ML skill and one replica, you will require 1 CPU and 4 GB RAM, no GPU required, and 20 GB on the rancher partition. And for DU model training, right? So you will require 2 CPUs, 24 GB RAM, and GPU is strongly recommended because training will, you know, take, the heavy processing. So definitely GPU is strongly recommended. uh, and if we talk about the disk, 20 GB on rancher partition is required. Minimum 51 GB AI center disk partition required, but recommended is 105 GB. Next, computer vision requirements. So most of you are aware that what is computer vision, right? It is something which allows you to perform the uh, image automation very efficiently, right? So for that, uh, for we will require 8 GB memory as a minimum, and recommended is 16 GB. CPU 2 core with AVX2 enabled, right? For which is applicable to both minimum and recommended. GPU we will require 8 GB as a minimum and 16 GB as a recommended. Storage, we will just need 30 GB free. So just to store the data, right? The persistent data, we will require the MS SQL database server. So there are various versions that we support for Automation Suite. So these versions are, on Microsoft SQL Server 2016, 2017, 2019, 2022, and which allows standard and enterprise editions, not the developer editions. You can also make use of Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance, and Amazon Relational Database Services with the minimum requirements as 8 CPUs, 32 GB RAM, and 256 GB SSD. So 256 GB SSD is initial one based on the data that you're going to process for automation. It can increase or decrease, but 256 is minimum something you need to keep. NFS server for backup. So any Linux-based on-premise or cloud-managed NFS server with version 3 or 4 is uh, allowed to use for backup, and it should configure with the 4 CPU, 8 GB RAM, and 1 TB storage. Now we will talk about deployment types, right? So the one of such deployment type is online deployment. Okay, so uh, when you install automation suite and you are running the automation suite, during that time if internet is required, then it is an online deployment, right? So UiPath products and registries are stored in UiPath registry or UiPath trusted third party store. So any registry, any library, or any component will be accessible through internet while installation, right? And if there are any security concerns or any the compliance policies that you need to adhere, right? In that case, you can have firewall and the proxy server, right? Just to block the traffic based on your requirement. So as you can see, this there is a firewall and proxy server, right? Which is part of the corporate network, right? And then internet comes up to access the various services. So this online deployment is easier, faster, and require less hardware to install and manage. And once you install automation suite, with online deployment, you cannot change it to the offline deployment. So we will see what is offline deployment in the next slide. So as you can see, this is the offline deployment. So offline deployment is also known as the air gap deployment, and this is isolated from the internet. So your automation suite instance does not have access to the internet. So any data that you need to pass on to your automation suite nodes, you need to have some jump server, and it requires installation of additional registry to store UiPath products, container images, and binaries, right? As I mentioned yeah, earlier, right? So any Docker images or any binaries, right? That will require during the installation, right? So during installation, it will refer from this particular additional disk that we are going to set as a UiPath bundle as a disk, right? And since the new disk the additional disk is required, so it is additional hardware required in this particular model, and we need to upload binaries and registries, which takes time. So uh, at the end, it increases the complexity and time required for the installation. So our few of the customers refers this one because they have some security concerns that their VMs do not have direct access to internet, so they can make use of such kind of offline deployment. And once the automation suite is installed uh, as an offline deployment, you cannot turn it or change it to the online deployment. Okay, so uh, whatever we are currently discussing, right, that is specifically to a Linux embedded deployment option. We do have another deployment options like AKS, which is Azure Kubernetes Service, EKS, which is Elastic Kubernetes Service of AWS, and OpenShift. So in that case, your Kubernetes infra will be part of AKS, EKS, and OpenShift, and you and your IT or the infra team will be managing your Kubernetes and upgrade and everything. But our focus will be on the only product. But since we are going to uh, discussing the Linux embedded option, right, in our workshop, uh, we will see how this Kubernetes layer is installed into the next slides and or into the next few moments, right? So one such activities while performing automation suite, you before installation you will require the details of as to how many VMs I need to provision, what should be the size of it based on my requirement. I say for example, automation suite is providing 8 to 10 products for installation. I just want to install 4 products, right? And I want to install it on AWS. I want to install it on um, maybe on Azure, or I want to install it offline, online, right? I want to have external storage. I don't want to have external storage. So there are various multiple parameters based on which you will need to understand how many or what kind of resources I will require to deploy my automation suite. So for that, one tool is created that is called a capacity planning calculator. We will have a look at it. So is it visible or as of now?
Okay, we are seeing the PPT.
Okay, let me change it. Okay. So now are you able to see my screen as a browser screen?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Automation
fine.
suite Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for confirming. So team, as you can see, this is automation suite install sizing calculator, right? So this will give you the fair idea about uh, how many resources you will require in terms of hardware, right? So you can click on change product selection, right? And you can select the products that you really require, right? So I just keep it as you can select the version of the automation suite, all right? You can select the profile, whether you want to have single node, multi-node, AKS, EKS, right? Whether you want to have air-gapped deployment. Air-gapped is something where your AS instance will not have access to the internet, also known as the offline. What is your data center? AWS, Azure, right? Or on-prem. If you want to enable the backup, whether it is multi-zonal, right? So say for example, it is multi-node, right? Now, uh, if we choose the process mining, right? In process mining, we require the separate database. So currently it shows the one shared SQL server, right? That is specific for automation suite, right? Now, if I select the process mining, right, you will see one DB server is added, right? So dedicated SQL server, right? So this is how you will be able to understand that, this is something I need to deploy to fulfill all this requirement, and you will have the all the description of the various products and what product will require what kind of CPU, what number of CPU, and what number of RAM, right, to run the automation suite successfully, right? So it also provides the recommendations, right? So you can play around with it, and once, say for example, it has the feature to store the the settings that you have already selected. So you just can copy the shareable URL and share it across with your team members, so that they can get the exact selection of whatever you have selected and get the fair idea about what is required, right? Okay, I'll move to slide then. All right. So next up is setting up DNS. So definitely your automation suite will work on some domain, right? So we call it as FQDN, that is fully qualified domain name, right? So for automation suite application, it will be like automationsuite.mycompany.com. You can keep it as per your company requirement. It is just the example. For ALM, you can have it ALM dot then your FQDN for monitoring. Same goes for monitoring.fqdn. And similarly for the object store, Docker registry, insights, and apps. And these are the URL by which you will be able to access all kind of different features or the different kind of application through this DNS and domains. And how to set up the or the configure the DNS, right? Using the public domain register. So you need to create a record or a CNAME. One is the automation suite, which is FQDN, and another is for star.automation suite, which is using the wildcard. So in some cases, what I've seen as certain organization, restrict this usage of the wildcard star, right? So you need to add the specific domains, right? Like ALM dot, automation suite dot, whatever your company.com, right? Similarly, for all ALM monitoring, object store, registry, insights, and apps, for all you need to create the records, right? And for a record, you should have IP address of the load balancer, and for CNAME, DNS name associated with the load balancer, right? I will show you the example of the same. Okay, so one moment. This is my private DNS zone. I have a record sets for star and at the rate. I can create it, right? I have mentioned the IP address of my node, single node. Similarly for the at the rate, right? So this is how the DNS configuration will look like, right? So from this point, I will stop my presentation and I'll hand it over to Pawan to take it from here. Over to you, Pawan.
Thank you, Ram. That was very insightful. Hello, everyone. So we will continue from where Ram has left. Right. Let me share my screen first. Uh, can someone confirm whether you are able to see my screen? And is it the Azure window? Hello?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Screen is visible. Is it the Azure window on the
Yes,
Chrome?
yes, it is
Okay,
Chrome, Azure.
thank you, Ram. So before we start, right? So we will try to install a single node automation suite to start off things, keeping it simple, right? We will be trying to perform a online installation of automation suite, right? I will walk you through like what machine I have created, how I have configured the DNS, then how to configure the disks that are required, where to get the package from, how to download it. Once the configuration of the disk is done, how we can go ahead and configure all the services which are needed for the installation, right? And we will also see in depth how you can disable, enable certain services depending upon your requirement or need, right? And once that is done, we will be installing infrastructure layer, which is the service fabric, basically the infrastructure layer, the Kubernetes layer, where you have RKE and other infra components which are responsible for servicing the UiPath services, microservices. Post that, we will try to kick off, if time permits, we will try to kick off the service layer installation as well. Fine. So with that, I will go first to my machine, right? So I have created one server, which is Linux 9.5 OS. It is associated with a public IP address. And if I go to the network settings, currently I have allowed the traffic to flow in, right? So this is a very simple server machine that I have created. And this contains 32 vCPUs and 64 GB of RAM. Right. So this is my small VM configuration settings. Post that, within my resource group, I'm also having my SQL server. So I have hosted this SQL server on Azure as well. So because for automation suite to install, you need to provision certain databases. Either you can provision those databases upfront, or what you can do is you can just provide the server instance and the installer is going to automatically create those databases for you with the required tables and the schema. So this is my database server, and if you see, this is AS.com Pawan database Windows Net. This is my address, and I tried to connect it from here. It is being connected through SQL, right? Now, this third prerequisite that I have done is I have created a DNS entry, and this is my DNS. So if I go to the record sets, you will be able to see I'm allowing as in Pawan and *.pawan. So as RK was telling, right, there are multiple FQDN entries that you need to make for registry, for ALM, for monitoring, etc., etc. So if you are able to create using wildcard, that is well and good. If not, then isolatedly, individually, for those individual FQDNs, you will have to create a AA record and provide the IP address of a load balancer, or in this case, I'm using a single server machine for a simple installation. I have provided a single IP. Right. Now to connect to a Linux database, a Linux server machine, you need Putty, or you can use any of the additional tools that are present in the market. So what I have done here is I have done a couple of prerequisites here. If I go to my history, so if you see, right, I tried to install Telnet just to check the connectivity, whether it is getting resolved or not. Then I have tried to NS lookup whether this resolved into a proper IP address, which is my machine IP. Then I will be installing all the packages within my root LV. Fine. All those packages must be going within this root LV, and the space was not enough within that LV. So I have increased it by 10 GB. I have stopped my firewall services, and I have currently disabled my firewall. Fine. Post which I have tried to create a automation suite directory. you need to use the similar commands, which will be provided to you as a bundle. So we will be providing you all these commands. And then I have tried to get the package in reference to time. So I have already downloaded this package, right? You can go ahead, and this is the link which will be provided to you. I tried to unzip the installer, and then I have navigated into the CD installer folder, right? So if I have to check CD, wait, CD, so 1 second, CD installer. Hit installer, and unless if I have to look at the files, we have all the files that are being needed. So once this bundle got downloaded, I have unzipped the bundle into the installer directory, right? So all the extracted files which are needed for the installation are present here. This link is present within our docs path. If you go navigate to like download links, you will be able to find these wget download links. If you're not able to find, don't worry, we will be supplying it with the package as well. But please always do refer our online documentation, because at times it would happen that the links do get updated and you might not have the updated link. So I would recommend you always pick the link from the documentation page of UiPath official. Okay, now we will go and start, right? So since we have downloaded all the packages and all the files, right, we would try to go ahead and configure the disk, right? So as RK was mentioning, we need to configure a cluster disk. We need to configure a etcd disk. We need to configure a object store disk. Fine. Then we need to configure a chef raw disk, and then for a single node installation, you need a backup disk as well. Now these are my disk name: dev, sd, v, sdf. Okay, sorry, you are able to see my all the screens, right? Notepad, Notepad plus plus. I'm not sharing one,
Yes.
but yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So etcd name, like, so these are reference pointer. Now what I will go and do is I will try to identify which disk I need to configure where. LSBL, okay, right? So if you see, I have a disk A, which is 512 GB, B 512 GB, C 512 GB, D 512, E 16 GB, right? And F 512 GB. So I have added certain disks here which get utilized while we configure the disk. Now I'm going to go to our official documentation page, and if you see this page, you will be able to find the configure disk here. So cluster disk in total, this would be 190, 56, and 10. That makes it 256. etcd disk is 16 GB only, right? Now taking that as a reference, my 16 GB disk is SDE, right? And this is being used as an etcd disk. So you will be able to find the commands here, right? So you need to configure a etcd disk. You need UiPath control RK2 etcd disk name, and you give the disk. So I have formulated this particular command and put it on the notepad as an etcd disk. So my volume was for 16 GB is SDE. So I'm gonna replace this with SDE so that it is 16 GB only. So I will double verify it. SDE 16 GB. This goes as an etcd disk, right? The cluster disk was 256. Minimum required was 256. If you see here, this is the cluster disk. Minimum required is 256. You can have it on the higher side as well. So if you are using, so this is minimum required. If you are using DU and modern DU projects, you require a higher disk, right? So I'm going to go ahead and configure 512 for this cluster disk, and I can choose any one of the disks, which is 512. Assume I will take as DDD. I will take as a D, right? And then I'm going to use the object store, right? So object store disk is as well 512 GB, as you see. So I can take as in C, which is 512 object store. I will make that as in C. Chef raw disk, I will take another disk as in which is 512. I can take that as in B. This is already B, so I will keep as is. Backup disk as in C, I can take that as an A or F, anyone. Fine. So I can take that as an A. Now, while you're configuring this, right, it's very important that you double verify this, because in case if you go wrong, then you might have to add a disk or add a volume, or you need to unmount all these volumes and do it again. So I'm going to just double verify it. Cluster disk 512 SD, D cluster 512, this is fine. Then etcd disk SDE 16 GB, SDE, this is 16 GB. Object store disk SDC, SDC of this will be object store 512. SDB is chef raw disk, P is chef raw disk, this is 512. SDA is 512. Now, if you go ahead and try to execute this, then it will go ahead and configure all the disks for you. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me try to configure this. I will copy and directly execute this. So before that, I'm gonna give execute permissions, because if you see, I think it doesn't have execute permissions on these files, and configure UiPath disk. If you observe this, it doesn't have an execute permission. So let me go back and try to give execute permissions on this. So I'm gonna use chmod and then -recursive 755 on installer folder. Right, I think that should do it. Yep. Now I'm gonna do cd ins installer ls. Okay, now you see everything is clean, so the permissions are there. So basically I can go ahead and execute the commands now. So this is what I have prepared to configure disk. It will configure all the disks. And I haven't made any changes, so there you will be seeing certain errors which I have kept purposefully in the time of installation. If something breaks, that would be purposeful, and we would be doing the debugging looking at the documentation. Now, I think the configure disk has worked, and let's do an lsblk. Okay. Now, this is the backup disk, and if you have to compare it, right? Let's do a one by one comparison on this. So my cluster disk is varlib rancher, varlib kubelet, and opt automation suite. Rancher, kubelet, opt automation suite. So this is my cluster disk, right? etcd disk, the lv should be varlib rancher rk2 server db. So etcd, this is varlib rancher server db, right? And data disk, we haven't used it. The monitoring insights, you have the configuring as an insights, monitoring, object store, right? So there are additional configurations. If you want to, I have kept this very simple. If you want to increase the size, or you want to provision other spaces, you can use the below commands which are present within the our documentation. Like you resize the Docker registry, you can resize it, right? And the same goes with Ceph as well. So once the disks are being configured, fine. So there is a need that we need to reload the controls. So we will do that. And you can do it by UDM control and then reload. I will try to install. Now, automation suite does have requirement on certain RPM packages, which needs to be present and installed. So it has been bundled, and if you just run the prerequisites checks for automation suite, it should be able to install all the relevant RPM packages. So what you can do is you need to go inside bin, UiPath control, RKE, prerequisites, and create. So create is gonna create all those packages and install it. So we will try to create it. Now, if you see, it will go ahead and try to install all the relevant libraries, all the tools that are needed for the installation as in prerequisites. It will do it automatically because everything has been configured within the scripts as well. Whatever is needed for the automation suites, every package gets installed, every RPM package gets installed. And if I have to take an example, like you see, these libraries, NFS RPC bind, util Linux, nmap, ncat, OpenSSL, HTTP tools, gettext, etc., like unzip and zip tools, all the files and the relevant packages gets installed in a single go. So you don't have to bother about like each and every single package installing, each and every RPM package installing. It does it by one. So meanwhile, this is getting installed. So here is how you can go ahead to validate the RPM packages, right? So these RPM packages are getting installed. Once installed, you can go as an UiPath control, RKE, prerequisite, run only RPM, right? And create only. So for time being, we are creating, which means we are trying to install the RPM packages. So to validate whether all are installed or not, you need to just use prereq against RKE and run that. So this will validate whether all the relevant packages are installed or there are any missing packages that needs to be installed. So I will just run a validation check and I will get the command from the same link. So, okay. Now, these are the RPM packages that are needed by Automation Suite. And if you see and observe, each of these have been installed properly. So we are good to go. Let me do one thing now. What we will do is we will create a Automation Suite directory with a corresponding version. Version is it is recommended to create a directory with a version because while upgrading, right, you can create a different folder against that version and you can place the different package of automation suite, which would be an upgraded version. So that's how you can segregate the installer and the packages because a lot of files might get duplicated. So I'm going to install this directory, create this directory, and then I'm going to move all my installer files to this particular 2024 directory. Move installer and to this package. So basically, okay, I need to go back probably. So all the commands will be provided to you that are being used within this session. So I think we have moved the installer files. What we can do is we can go ahead and validate OPT UiPath Automation Suite. And then the version was 24.10. Enter. ls. It will list down installer. I have a cd installer. And then you can go ls. Now all the files are moved here. What we can do is now we are inside the installer directory. What we will try to do is we will try to run prerequisites so that all the configs do get uploaded. Or what we can do is execute install UiPath sh. Now the file would be execute UiPath install sh. UiPath as sh. This file we need to execute. Think 1 second. I missed install UiPath sh. I will use about. Okay. Now this is an interactive wizard for the installation, right? And you can go ahead and choose multiple options from here. Now these are all the UiPath services that are being provided. This is the single node evaluation deployment, which we'll be doing. Multi-node, we would be looking into next session, and high availability, we'll be looking into next session. So this is currently we will be doing single node deployment for evaluation phase. So I will choose one as an option and hit enter. Now evaluation is for The single node is for evaluation only. I can go ahead and continue. Say that we are installing it online. Which product selection would you like to deploy? So if you give complete one, then all the products will be deployed. I think for which like you might have a very higher end CPU on the server machines, but this is a single node evaluation. So that would give you an opportunity to select the products as well. Now here, you can choose from these products as to which product is needed for your scenario. What happens when you start off installing automation suite, or when you're starting? Certain products you might be using, certain products you might not be using, like automation suite robots. You might have already deployed on your physical server machines. You can skip that as part of the installation. Process mining, if you want, you can skip it. And like this, you can define the products that you like. So for the time being, let's say I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 9. Let's keep it that much, right? And I'm gonna hit enter. Okay. AI Center, it is asking, does AI Center has an external orchestrator? So UiPath previously, what happens is you can deploy Automation Suite AI Center with connecting to an standalone orchestrator. That option was available. And so it is offering us whether you would like to use an external orchestrator. Our response is no, because we would be hosting orchestrator within our Automation Suite cluster. So we would say no. It provides you the product selected range, and then it asks you to whether you confirm with the choices or not. So yes, we do confirm, and we can go ahead. Let's enter. Now it is asking me for FQDN. Now this FQDN would be where you will be able to access your cluster details, right? So I have maintained this. This is my FQDN. This would be my FQDN for which I have configured the DNS, which I just showed you, creating a AA record. So we created a AA record here, and this is my DNS. And if you go to the record set, so my primary is pawan and then com asuipath.com. That would be my entire FQDN. So we will go back and I will copy this my FQDN so that I don't make typo errors. Okay, this is my FQDN. Would you like to bring your own object store? For the time, we have given the drives as in our storage, but if you want, you can also configure that, and configuration of the external object store can be done at a later point of time as well, which I will be showing you. Oh, sorry. This is my bad. I chose a wrong option. So let me cancel this. I will have to start over again once. So this is a single node. Continue online to, and in the interest of time, let's select 9, 1, 5, 2, 7. Fine. Does AI center users? No. This one, yes. Confirm. Enter to continue. Automation suite FQDN. Would you like to bring your object store for all the projects? No, I want to bring my external object store. We will use inbuilt. Second is external Redis. I can give a choice. Invalid. Okay, 1 second. Sorry guys, I made a typo. 1, 1, 2, and then we can give 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Okay, let's go ahead with this. External orchestrator, it is no. Confirm the product selection. Yes. Enter. FQDN. FQDN object store. No, I don't want. Would you like to bring your external Redis? So Redis is a non-persistent session management tool which you use with standalone orchestrator as well, right? So within Automation Suite, by default, Redis is available. It gets installed. So we would say no. Enable Kerberos authentication. For the time, we would say no. Now it is asking me for the SQL Server details, which I have kept handy. This is my database FQDN. Port is mine. It is hosted on a default port, and I'm gonna give the username the pass. Okay. It is asking, would you like to provision the databases automatically? So if you have already created databases which are required for the automation suite, you can say that as a no, but we haven't created. It's a plain SQL Server, and we would like the installer to provision all the databases automatically. If you are having a public certificate, the domain signed certificate, you can provide the path. If not, it would create a temporary certificate which can be used. So it says, if you want to continue editing, continue with the default config or edit the config. So we can continue with the default config. And we can say do as an exit. Now, what would happen is, if I go to ls, there will be a file named as an cluster config.json. Now, this has been done. So once this has been done, what you can do is you can try to load and run the prerequisite and the Helm chart according to the configured products that you have done. So what you need to do is you can run prerequisites, as in this will validate whether all the components that are being selected within the cluster config are loaded or not, and all the prerequisites are completed or not. So you would run that. It says one error actually. If you observe, right, this is a prerequisite check. Depending upon the products that were selected, we wanted to run a prerequisite check. It says one error, and it is suggesting that IP forwarding is not being enabled within this machine, right? So we can go ahead and enable IP forwarding. Give me a moment. The command is present within our online docs. Well, let me grab it. So what we can do is we can cat this file. It says 0, IP forwarding is not enabled. Then we can set this value to system control. Net IPv4 IP address forward is equals to 1. The value will be set as in 1. And then what we can do is we can just cat the same file again and then try to see if the forwarding has been enabled or not. Now the forwarding has been enabled. What we can do is we can run the validation again and assume the validation passes. Okay, only 3 warnings, which I'm gonna ignore it, but there are no major errors. So which means we are good to run the Fabric infra installer basically. So RKE and install, and K refers as an Kubernetes layer. So it will go ahead and install the entire Kubernetes layer within the platform. So as you mentioned, all the components requiring at the infra layer will be installed by the execution of this, right? Meanwhile, this completes, right? It is going to take a few minutes for the completion. I'm going to walk you through, I have a different machine altogether, using which I'm going to walk you through the cluster config file, right? td /opt UiPath automation suite ls. So backend is the installation that is going on for the infra layer, and This is for conceptual, how you can configure your advanced parameters. So if you go to this particular directory, you will find cluster.config JSON file, right? So if you add this particular file, cluster.config JSON, so all the services that are being enabled, you will be able to find here all the relevant settings that are being needed. Now, assume a scenario wherein you want to use Action Center, right? Once the installation has been already complete and the cluster was already set up. So you can come back to this cluster.config, and instead of enabled, you can make this as in false and run the services layer installer. So you can go ahead and modify these settings, and these settings will take in place once you rerun the Fabric installer. The Kubernetes layer gets installed for all the components, but if there are any changes regarding the settings, configurations, then you will have to make these changes within the cluster.config file that often resides within the automation suite directory. This file gets created when you run install dot. We ran this one, right? This command. One second. We ran install sh, right? We ran this command. Install UiPath sh file we ran. It would create the entire cluster.config, the interactive wizard. And I will take an example. Say that data service is false. So what you can do is you can go to VI editor and cluster config. You can edit this particular file and you go down, say that data service is false. You can change these flags, insert as in true, right? True. And you can escape, exit, WQ and settings, right? Now, what would happen is since the service was not enabled and you make that as in false or true, and you run the service layer fabric, it would get installed. The service would get enabled, or you can do vice versa as well. Say that today apps is installed within your cluster, and if tomorrow you don't know it, you can come back and say that as in false. Same goes with document understanding, and same goes with any of the available services here. Another example would be currently we are using this is a connection string, right? These are the connection string placeholders. If you don't want this connection string and you are bringing your own databases, so in a JSON format, you will be able to configure here the entire connection string. So for platform or for orchestrator, you can here you can give as a parameter S3, configure your S3 buckets. You can give parameter as a connection string, configure your entire connection string, right? So we'll come back to this. We will go in detail with each of these parameters. Meanwhile, this infra layer or the Kubernetes layer installation has been completed, right? So once it is completed, we need to export certain configs, right? So that it gets used in the later stages. So we will set up a path for kubeconfig as an rancher YAML. We will set path for RKE bin. You can set the path, export path is equals to path and then bin path. And then we will say that as a license agreement as an accept. So once this is done, right, what you can do is you can so we ran history. So we have already ran Kubernetes layer, right? And we used install Kubernetes layer install, right? Now what we will do is we will try to create Helm charts for all the services. So this is gonna again take some time, and I will go back to the cluster config. So while configuring, right, you might need certain help right, how you are going to download the packages. So I'm going to walk you through. This is the asinstaller.zip file, which we used for download. If you right click here, you should be able to find the download links and all the package installers that you can download. And each of the file commands have been given, like this is how you can get this zip file. Now you need to do this. If you are installing an offline installer, you need to do this from a machine where you have an internet. And in case your server doesn't have, Linux server doesn't have an internet, what you can do is you can use WinSCP or any other tools or methods to transfer these installer files within the Linux server machines. Now, I will go to configuring SQL servers, which we talked about connection strings, right? So if you see this, right, it will list you all the connection strings. So this is the default database name that's get created. If you want to change this database name, you might have to change the connection strings. 1 second, let me go down. Just give me a moment. I will go to the section. So this is adu.connection string, and you will be able to find the format as well. So this is what you will get as in format, and the same format has been listed within our file as well. These are the placeholder for all the connection strings. If you are bringing individual databases, you can go ahead and configure this within each of the services. So this is going to take some time for the completion. Meanwhile, any questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
I would like to add one point over here. So any commands that you run, it has to be run from the root user.
Okay, so it was trying to connect to the database, and it seems while connecting to the database, a timeout occurred. So probably we will try to run this again so that it creates the databases. So once this is created, right? So once these Helm charts and all the databases have been created, what you need to do is it will create a manifest, and you just need to apply the manifest here like this, right? So once you apply this particular manifest, this would be the last step of your installation. So it says success. I think successfully created automation suite has database, successfully created database, successfully created database, successfully created. So my all the databases are been created for my fabric layer. And now what we can do is we can just apply this manifest and run this. This would complete your installation. This is the last step, and post this steps, the installation would get completed. This is a larger step within the entire automation suite installation. It would take around 45 to 50 minutes for completion, or might take longer as well, depending upon the number of products, depending upon the number of services that you have selected. So with this, right, we will continue. I think we will keep on running this background, and when we come for the next session, right, we will start from the same screen and from the same place. But by that time, the installation would have been completed, and I would walk you through critical log files, log details as to what step happened when and what you can observe for. I think with that, I think I will close off this session. From the second, for the agenda for the second session, right, I would be walking you through. First, I will continue with this installation, show you how you can access post-installation automation suite, what are the multiple components there, how you can access them, and then I will continue with the installation of multi-node automation suite. with a 3 node cluster and one agent node. We will be completing that installation in our next session. So thanks a lot for joining in, dialing in today. Have a great day. Over to you, Swani.
Everybody, it was an amazing session. Thanks for joining. See you in the next session. Hope you enjoyed. And yes, have a good day. Have a good week ahead.
Thank you, guys. If you guys have any questions, happy to answer. Okay, then I think Swani, I think we
Yes,
can wrap.
we can end the meeting. Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Bye.